Thank you, Friends of Italy Society of Hawaii. I am really happy to be back with you again and be back from my house in Kaneohe. I just got back from 2.5 months working in Italy, northern Italy as usual, and it was great. It was busy, and I can tell you that if you're planning to go to Italy anytime before, I'd say, late October, November, and you're going to go to the hot spots, be prepared for crowds, because I've been going to Italy for a long time, and I can honestly say I don't think I've ever seen it more crowded. So be prepared, plan accordingly, go to your museums early and make reservations in advance. So that's my tip from the road from this spring. So but tonight we're going to focus on Piemonte or Piedmont, as we anglicize Italian words, as most of you know that. But Piemonte is the region we're going to talk about. It's one that I think a lot of people haven't heard of before. I've had people say, "Oh, well, where is that exactly? What's interesting about it?" So this is just going to be really not so much the logistics of moving around that I've been focusing on in other talks, but this is going to be just kind of more global. What's interesting about Piemonte? Where is it? And why is it so beautiful? And where are those vineyards exactly? And we'll get to all of that. So the overview for tonight, we're going to talk a little tiny bit about the history, Torino or Turin, which is the capital city, and the environs, just some areas just around Torino. And then the wine regions, which some of you may be really familiar with. Very famous wines come from the Piemonte region. Then the mountains, we'll talk about that a bit, and the lakes. So Piemonte really has it all. It doesn't have beaches, but it has almost everything else. So a little bit of history. Piemonte was colonized by the Romans in the 2nd century BC. It was lying along a route that got to Gaul, which is where France is now. It also lies along an important pilgrimage route. You can see I've copied this map here. This is a lot of people have heard about the Camino de Santiago. This is the Via Francigena that goes all the way from Canterbury, hop across the channel, and then all the way down through France, and then along through northern Italy down to Rome. And you can see over here, if you look at my cursor, right here, this is where Piemonte is. So this will become important when we're talking about abbeys and some of the sites to see in Piemonte. Piemonte is also really mostly famous now as the home of the royal family of Italy. They were a noble family since 1003, so over 1,000 years they've been a noble family, and they were the first king of Italy. The only royal family of Italy is from Piemonte, and the capital city Torino is the first capital of Italy after it unified in 1861. So Torino lies at the foot of the Alps. The Alps really are surrounding Piemonte. Piemonte actually translated piedi are feet, monte, mountains, the foot of the mountains, and the mountains lie all around the borders of Piemonte. Here is a map that shows you exactly where Torino is. Here's Turin, Torino. And here you can see the border with France. I'm going to talk a bit today about this Aosta Valley here, which is where many of the ski and hiking resort towns are. But all of this is mountains and high mountains. So Torino is also located on the Po. That is the Po right there that runs right through Torino. And the Po River is for Italy what our Mississippi is. It is the longest river in Italy, and it begins in the Piemonte. Its source is in the Piemonte, and it runs to the east towards the Adriatic. Torino, because it was the home of the first of the kings of Italy, and it was the first capital of a newly unified Italy. It is really a city that's elegant. The word elegant is going to pop up into my talk a lot, just because that's what I think of when I think about Italy. But it is an arcaded European capital city with gorgeous galleries, shopping areas, and beautiful cafes. Torino, or Turin, is probably most famous for the Shroud of Turin. Here's a photo of that. But as I mentioned, historically, it's the home of the kings of Italy. And in this image here, you can see this building is where the first king of Italy was born. And he was born just down the street from the royal palace of the kings of Italy, of the House of Savoy. Here's an interior of that royal palace. More interior of the royal palace. And this chapel is actually one that was built in the 1600s. That is the cupola, or the dome of the chapel, that you can visit to see the Shroud of Turin. And that shroud came, there's a lot of controversy. Is it real? Is it not? Well, it first came into, really, there was any kind of documentation of its existence in the 1300s. And it came into the possession of these counts and kings of Savoy a few hundred years later. And in the 1600s, then they built this chapel, which is attached to the royal palace there in Torino. They've built this chapel to house the shroud. Torino has a wonderful cafe culture. So you could just spend days and days hopping from elegant cafe to elegant cafe. Here's a beautiful Art Deco cafe. And you could stop in there and have a wonderful, this is actually a photo I took, a wonderful cappuccino and a little pastry there, and just enjoy the ambiance. Or you could delve into something that is quite a specialty of Torino, and maybe something that you didn't know. But Torino is really kind of a chocolate capital of Italy, not just wine, but we're going to get into food as well. And Torino, because of this Savoy family, is one of the first areas to really establish a gourmet chocolate culture. And here, this Baratti in Milano, you can see on the box, it's from Torino, 1858. So before our Civil War, they have been making chocolates, and they make a chocolate here in the Piemonte in particular, called gianduia. And the gianduia is a chocolate and hazelnut flavor. The hazelnuts are grown in the Langhe region. And so this marriage of chocolate and hazelnut is very, near and dear to the Piemontese. Another connection with coffee and the coffee culture and the chocolate culture is a type of a drink that's a specialty when you go to Torino. It's called biccherin, which means the little glass. And this is a mix of, and you can find a recipe for this online if you want. It's espresso, drinking chocolate, and steamed milk. And you don't mix them with that spoon, really. You're actually supposed to just drink it in the layers. It's a wonderful, elegant chocolate drink. And they've been drinking it in Torino for about 200 years. If you want to, here's one of the beautiful cafes that you could drink it in. This is a cafe that's actually the China storage area of that royal palace that I showed you before. So you could stop into the cafe without going into the royal palace and have a cup of coffee or a biccherin. Another type of drink that you could have in a bar that maybe you've never thought of before, but they actually have vermouth kind of bars. You could go through Torino doing a vermouth tasting. And vermouth was the modern version of vermouth, which is a fortified wine that's infused with some aromatic herbs, even bark and roots. And it's often, used in mixers with martini, or with my husband's favorite drink, a Negroni. But you could go and just do vermouth tastings in Torino. But something, and this is not a mistake. I know some of you are saying, "What the heck? This is a talk about Torino. Why is there why is there a picture of an Egyptian museum?" Well, one of the largest, actually the largest dedicated Egyptian museum outside of Cairo is in Torino. Again, why? Because of that House of Savoy. It was first opened in 1824, and Jean-Francois Champollion, who famously translated the hieroglyphs, stated that the road to Memphis and Thebes passes through Turin. I don't know how many times I've been to this museum. It is absolutely stunning. And they remodeled it, completely redid it. It's a beautiful museum, wonderful audio guide. You could spend easily a day or two in there. Incredible museum. Another thing here, switching gears completely, this is the Fiat factory. Fiat, which was founded there in Torino. It begun in 1899, and the building that you're seeing there, this is the rooftop garden, the way that it looks today. Fiat that building was built in the 1920s and was a state-of-the-art, modern, largest automobile factory in Europe. And today they've redone what was their kind of test track. They would manufacture like Ford with his assembly line. They would manufacture in an assembly line, but it was on a ramp, and it would spiral up and up and up to this large rooftop where they would have a test track. And once the car was finished, it would do its final victory lap around this rooftop track and then go out onto the showroom floor. But just recently, within the past few years, they've replanted it, and now it's a beautiful botanical garden. And that dome there is a meeting room, very fancy meeting room, but that whole space has been redone by a famous architect, Renzo Piano, who actually also designed the Shard in London, if you're familiar with that. It's now got a theater, it's got a museum in it, an art museum that includes some paintings from Modigliani, Matisse, Renoir. So it is a sight to see in itself. Another landmark building in Torino is the Mole Antonelliana, which was originally built or intended to be a synagogue. There was a large Jewish community in Torino, and they commissioned the architect to build this, but the ambitions of the architect grew, as did the budget, the costs of it, and the capital of Italy moved later in the 1860s from Torino down to Florence, and with it, so did a large part of the Jewish community. It ended up not becoming a synagogue, but it is a landmark building. It is absolutely, it's like the Eiffel Tower for people from Torino. And inside it now is the Italian Museum of Cinema. Now moving out into the environs. Now this is a very dreamy photo. Some of you might be familiar with a famous Italian author named Umberto Eco, who wrote a book called The Name of the Rose, which was made into a film as well, about a medieval abbey. And this is the inspiration for Umberto Eco's book, The Name of the Rose. And you can see this Sacra di San Michele, which is just outside of Torino, was founded in 966 AD. So over 1,000 years, this abbey has been there, and it accepted pilgrims along that pilgrimage route that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Also, because of that House of Savoy, they're not going to be outdone by the French kings or the English kings with all of their palaces. Well, that House of Savoy built many, many palaces and hunting lodges. This is the Stupinigi Hunting Lodge. Together, collectively, all of these Savoy palaces, and you're going to see a few of them in this slideshow, are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So here's a larger view of the Stupinigi Hunting Lodge. Not bad for a lodge. And this is the interior of the Stupinigi hunting lodge, pretty fancy. This is another one of the beautiful palaces from the exterior, maybe not quite as dramatic as the other. And this one is just north of Torino. Now, I know a lot of you have been, since that first slide, you've been thinking about wine. Well, Barolo is probably the most famous of the wines from the Piemonte area. But here's a map to show you the wine regions of Italy. And I'll just put my cursor on Torino. Here's Torino right here. So it's easily a day trip out into all of these wonderful wine regions. You can see I've listed some of the many varietals of wines that come from Piemonte. And again, a day's drive, or you could stay in one of the beautiful little towns that I'm going to show you. So this is really eye candy right now. This is a beautiful Monforte d'Alba, and this is Asti. Some of you may be familiar with some of the different wines from Asti. And here is another small town just near Alba, Serralunga d'Alba. Again, just some eye candy. Now, Canelli is another town in this Langhe area, Roero, Monferrato area, which make up the wine regions of Piemonte. And at Canelli are something that they call underground wine cathedrals. And so these wine cathedrals are vaulted storage areas for kilometers and kilometers, multiple levels of these vaulted storage areas. Of course, because they're underground, they store the wine at a constant temperature. This is another thing that you could visit. You could go to Canelli. Now, not to be outdone by the wine, this is a region that hosts many, many Michelin star restaurants. In fact, Torino has more Michelin star restaurants than any other city in Italy. It's hard to really say one region is the gastronomic capital of Italy, but Torino is making a very strong bid. They, in fact, even converted, and this is another one of the Savoy family's palaces that was actually created because they like to entertain. And so they've turned this entertainment center palace of the Savoy family. Recently, it's been converted into the University of Gastronomic Sciences, and it is the home base also of what is known as the slow food movement. So at this University of Gastronomic Sciences, they're not training chefs, but they're working on kind of a marriage between gastronomy and sustainable agriculture, at looking at maybe some heritage species and these kinds of things. They also have something called a wine bank, which you can visit, and you can imagine has wines from all over Italy. Now, another very, very famous and not to be missed gastronomic experience when in Piemonte are the white truffles. White truffles are in and around the area of the Langhe and the capital town of Alba. Go on sale at a fair between October and December. You can yourself go to Alba and visit this kind of epicenter of the white truffle world, where white truffles, just to give you an idea, a kilo of truffle. Now that would be an enormously large truffle, but those truffles, depending on the season, the shape, the size, lots of market factors, a kilo of white truffles, these can go for thousands, 10,000 euros for a kilo of white truffles. Now, who would buy a kilo? I don't know, but still, they're very, very highly sought after, and not to be missed if you're in Piemonte in the period late October through December. Now, just one more look at this beautiful wine region, and you can see we're always surrounded by mountains everywhere. And we're going to move over into the mountains now. And this is what's known as Monte Rosa, which is a little bit further towards the east, and in the nice sunset light, it highlights that the red hue of the rock at Monte Rosa. Now, I've highlighted some famous mountains that you've probably heard of before. Mont Blanc here and the Matterhorn here. This is that region that I told you about, the Aosta Valley, the Val d'Aosta, which is in itself its own autonomous region. However, I wanted to show you just how close it is to Torino, and this Gran Paradiso Park, which I'll show you a slide from in a few minutes. It's only an hour and 15-minute drive from Torino. So the distances here are not great. And one town that I want to talk to you about is this Courmayeur. Courmayeur is on the Italian side of Mont Blanc, or Monte Bianco in Italian. You can take lifts from Courmayeur to Chamonix in France. So you could go there skiing, and you could take lift to lift to lift and go all the way across the Alps over into France, which to me would be great fun to do in the summertime for hiking as well. Here's an image of those beautiful peaks near the national park, Gran Paradiso Park. And here is another Val Grande in this Gran Paradiso Park. This is more my speed hiking. I'm not as big a fan of snow. So moving on now to the lakes. There are two lakes in the Piemonte region. This one is Lago Maggiore, which is here, you can see. And then there's a very small boutique, tiny little beautiful lake called Lake Orta, Lago d'Orta. Most people have not heard of Lago d'Orta. Lago Maggiore, yes. Now you can reach either one of these lakes from Milan or Torino, either one, by train, or obviously you could rent a car as well. Now, at Stresa on Lago Maggiore, this is elegant, kind of grand tour, beautiful late 19th century, early turn of the century, beautiful grand hotels. You could stay in a hotel like this. This hotel is the Hotel Borromeo, and it's actually the place where a young, soon-to-be famous author, Ernest Hemingway, recovered from his injuries, which were sustained when he was a medic in World War I, and he stayed here. And today you could actually stay for a very hefty sum in the Hemingway suite, which is where he convalesced as a young man. This is at Stresa on Lago Maggiore. You could take a boat ride from Stresa out to these Borromean Islands. Borromea was a noble family. These are private islands on which they have beautiful this beautiful garden with sculptures and very manicured, lovely, and a palace that you can visit on these islands, or just wander around in some beautiful little back lanes like this one. And I've kept it under 30 minutes. And I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank the Friends of Italy Society of Hawaii. That is the end of my prepared presentation. If you'd like to reach me, I've left all my possible contact information up here, website, my Instagram, if you want to follow me. I'm going to be working on that more in the summer. My email address there. And yes, I am doing a tour of Piemonte in the fall of 2024, just in time for that White Truffle Festival. And we will be, or that fair, we will be visiting that on my tour.